Alright, 7-5, day 1, rhombi and squares. So this section has a no essential question. What special properties do rhombi and squares have? So let's get into the properties of rhombis. Rhombis have the same properties as parallelograms, so your opposite sides are parallel and congruent. Opposite angles are congruent. Consecutive angles are supplementary. Remember, that means they equal 180. And diagonals bisect each other. Now, some special properties that make rhombi rhombi. All four sides are congruent, and if they are congruent, that means they are also equal to each other. So all four angles measure the same. All right, important to know for your assignment. You can set any two sides equal to each other because all four are the same sides. All right, diagonals. Diagonals are perpendicular. So these make the diagonals. You will have 90-degree angles. That's important to know as well. The diagonals make 90-degree angles. They're perpendicular. And then next up, the diagonals bisect opposite angles. All right. So if they bisect the angles, they're cutting that angle exactly in half. That's important to know because in order to get the whole angle, if you have half of an angle, multiply it by 2. Again, just something you're going to need to know for your assignment. Now, properties of square. All right, squares have the same properties as parallelograms, rectangles, and rhombi. All right, so just like rectangles, they have 4 90-degree angles. And just like rhombi, all 4 sides are congruent, which means they equal each other. Okay, important things to know. All right, so we have 2 theorems on the front here about diagonals of rhombi. 1, 2. First theorem, if a parallelogram is a rhombus and then the diagonals are perpendicular, which means 90-degree angles, important. Theorem 2, if a parallelogram is a rhombus, then the diagonals bisect a pair of opposite angles. Again, definitely good information to have. All right, let's do some math. Let's use the definitions of a rhombus. All right, so if LM is 2x minus 9 and KN is x plus 15 in the rhombus, okay, rhombus, we're talking about sides, all 4 sides equal each other, find the value of x. Well, side LM is congruent to side KN, which means they equal each other, which means we can set what their sides measure to each other. And so we're going to subtract x from both sides. We're going to add 9 to both sides. X, sorry, and that is 24. All right, so at the bottom, you write your summary. You're going to answer your question about the properties. Okay, what special properties do rhombi and squares have? 2 days of answering that question. All right, on the back, let's check out. Let's use the diagonals of a rhombus. Okay. So the diagonals of a rhombus, KLMN, intersect at point P. Okay, we got angles here. So if angle LMN, if LMN, this is the whole big angle, LMN, okay, if the entire thing, this entire thing is 75 degrees, what is the measure of K and P. Okay, K and P. What's the measure of this? Okay, that's what we're searching for. All right. Well, what do we know about rhombuses? Well, we know a couple things. We know that opposite angles are congruent. So this one's 75. This one also has to be 75, the whole thing. The whole thing is 75. But we don't want the whole thing. We want just this portion here, because we're trying to find this small angle here. We're going to focus on this triangle, okay? We're going to focus on this triangle here. That includes that angle, okay? Because we're just looking for this triangle here. Well, let's focus on this angle currently. Well, the whole angle is 75 degrees, and if this bisects this angle, we want half of it. All right, so what is half of 75? Well, half of 75 is 37.5 degrees. That's this small portion. We're looking for this small portion. So what else did we learn about rhombuses? Well, we learned that the diagonals are perpendicular, and we said they are perpendicular, which makes right angles. And what's the measure of a right angle? Well, it's 90 degrees. So we have two of the three angles of a triangle. We can find the missing angle. Okay, and that's what they did here. That's an explanation of what they are talking about in this region here, okay? So PKN we found was 37.5, so they substituted that in. We know that KPN is 90 degrees, they substituted that in. We're trying to find K and P, and we know that every triangle on Earth is 180 degrees. So what they did for this step was substitution. Okay, so 37.5 plus 90, these are like terms. So that's 127.5. So let's subtract that. 127.5 from 180, that gives me 52.5. That's the measure of angle K and P. To use all of this knowledge to find our pieces. And you're going to have to do that on your assignment. You're going to have to use the knowledge that you have of triangles with these rhombuses and squares. So last one, we're going to use the definition of the square. All right, so EFGH is a square. It's not upright, but it's a square. That's what it's telling us. And we have FJ, okay, we have FJ is 19, and what's it want? It wants FH. All right, FH. Well, if this is a square, okay, we want FH. Okay, so we know from the properties on the front, our diagonals bisect each other. And if our diagonals bisect each other, that means both sides are equal to each other. So if this side is 19, this side has to be 19. And you add those two together, and you get 38. All right, so that's our picture. So let's prove it. So FJ is congruent to JH because it's bisected. So that means they also equal each other. Okay, so FJ is 19, and that's also JH. All right, and so this is FH. So we substitute in 19 and we get 38. Okay? Remember, use all of your knowledge that you have. All right, so this assignment is on McGraw-Hill. Make sure you show your work. You're going to have to show your work. Number 3 also uses the Pythagorean theorem to find the missing side. All right, and remember with the Pythagorean theorem, that is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are legs, and c is your hypotenuse, all right? And in your right triangle, shortest side is A, B. A and B always make your right angle. They're called your legs. And C does not make the right angle as a slant. That's your hypotenuse, all right? You're going to be given your hypotenuse and you have to find the length of a leg. So it's giving you a hint of what you need to do for number 3. And because we're finding square roots, you definitely need a calculator and you are going to have to show your work. So make sure you write down your work. Good luck.